What the? Let her rip. Dogs. So we're going to do like a teaching series, which we've started, and that's great, but I want to use the full capability of the tools that I have and show you what I would do. So I picked up a project, and what I'm going to do, these are like, I've made these for a lot of people. These are what I call an F-bomb. It looks like a cartoon bomb. And today we're gonna make this, and we're gonna talk about how it's made, this is all, by the way, made out of reused material. So back in the day when they were like really concerned about recycling, there were the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is the last thing you want to do. Before you want to reduce, but you also want to reuse. So these pieces of metal, cool art pieces, if you will, they're all from scrap steel, like stuff that was at the scrapyard or laying around or somebody threw away on the curb. All of it is made from stuff that would be recycled, you know, made into more steel probably, but we're gonna make something real cool out of this. And then we're going to go through the process of how I would sell this on a platform such as, we're gonna use Etsy, because I'm somewhat familiar with that, and we're gonna see how they do. So we're just trying to get the channel going. I have a unique take on blacksmithing and other things. You know, we're just gonna go, the channel's gonna go where I wanna go. And I wanna bring you along for the ride. So please, if possible, hit that like button. That really helps the channel grow. Subscribe if you would like to see this content. And I promise you, the channel will get better. Right now, we're just learning how to do YouTube, and maybe at some point we'll bring the audience along for that. And I have a lot of information to share. I've been doing this as a hobby and for a long time, and I think it'll be really interesting. I tailor it to the type of content that I would like to see. And I do have a lot of cool tools, but they were accumulated over 35 years of doing this. And I want to give back to people that helped me, so the next generation gets excited about this, gets excited about all the possibilities of things. We just live in a golden age where there's just awesome material that they throw away and you can make something cool out of it. And we're gonna make one of these projects, and I'll show you how I do it with the tools that I have. All right, so like I said, let's keep with the scrap metal theme. The materials that I need, all this was like harvested for virtually no money. This was a cable that some loggers were throwing out. You know, it wasn't suitable for logging anymore. I'm gonna use this, and we're gonna make the wick part out of cable. Some 5/8 rod. I think it's about 5/8. Bigger than 1/2 inch, smaller than 3/4. Must be 5/8. That was from the scrapyard. Then the discs. So you need about like a 5-inch disc. I just cut these out with the angle grinder. They don't have to be exactly 5 inches, but 5 inches is a good place to start. And then we'll end up with a hollow sphere. I'm big into, like I say, I'm big into recycling. So this is from the propane tank. I just harvested the steel and cut a bunch of roughly 5-inch discs, so old piece. For today's project, I don't know, this was something that was at the scrapyard. Some kind of machine cover that I harvested these discs out. The paint is going to burn off when I put it in the forge. Have your forge well ventilated, because I have no idea what's in this paint. But all this whole project is going to be made out of scrap material, and then we're going to see how much we can sell it for. So let's get to forging. So it's important when you're just starting out, you're going to need to buy tongs, because you are going to want, there's nothing more frustrating than not being able to hold a hot piece of metal. But eventually you'll figure out how to make tongs. They're pretty simple. It requires some forging, and there are a ton of videos on how to make tongs. And these things are getting expensive. So for this project, I'm using these custom-made tongs. What it is it provides 3 points of contact for picking up a piece of plate. They work really well. The other thing I needed, when I sink the bowl, or what we're going to do is we're going to forge 2 hemispheres and then cut them so they look good, and then we're going to just weld them together. But this hammer, for instance, was made out of also scrapyard find. This hammerhead was made out of this part of an old jackhammer bit, and I needed a very long shaft in order to forge out a bowl or a hemisphere form. You'll see that being used. So it gets back to our recycled materials. There's a lot of stuff that's good for tools. I mean, this was a jackhammer bit. It's going to be able to hand hammer all day long, because it's used for busting rock and concrete. So when I wire brush stuff, I have my tongs, I lock it against the vise, I push it, or against the handle, and I push it away. So one thing that I'm extremely grateful to have is what's called a fly press. And we got this a long time ago that we were at a blacksmith conference, SOFA, which is it's near Dayton, Ohio. But this fly press is a valuable tool. It's a Sweeney and Block-Sidge. It was made in England, and it's missing a part here. This was sheared off, and it would there was a screw that went to here. But for my purposes, it works excellent, and I'm extremely fortunate to have it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this machine when the metal is hot. I have basically another recycled item. This used to be an eye bolt or an eye hook, and I cut the threads off, and I use it to I'm going to use it to start the dishing or hemisphere process. So I just make sure. So the way it works is, you can see this cut right here. It's basically a spiral inclined plane. It dumps all the energy. I'm missing one of the balls here. That would be great. I would have, but it dumps all the energy and it hits. You can use this to adjust the depth, but in this case, I'm just going to bottom it out, so I don't care about the depth. But all I do is I make sure my bottom die is kind of seated. I'm gonna center up my piece of metal and I'm gonna give it a whack, and it's gonna start making the dish form to start my hemispheres. The hemispheres, you have to kind of press them a little at a time, otherwise they'll get distorted. And I'm gonna use the fly press, then I'm gonna come over to this wedge block and maybe true it up with a hammer. And you'll see, we'll get two nice hemispheres that'll make this. So I'm gonna center up the material as best I can, and let her rip. You can work it when it's quite cold. I picked up, of course, the wrong tongs. But we have our basic disc shape, or bowl shape started. I'm gonna put this back in the forge, and well, real quick, I'm gonna heat up the second piece. Maybe I'll do a little better. This is from it not being centered properly. That's what it looks like. See, it wasn't quite centered. That's okay. It will, eventually it'll be fine. This tool, which might be really hot still, is it's out of a rock mill, like a ball mill that they use to break up aggregate or cement. It's a ball from that, so it's really good steel. And then my tooling has a 1-inch shank, and I just weld a 1-inch nut to it, and it's perfect. It's got a nice shoulder, it pushes down. And so I'm done using this tool. It's so massive, it's not very hot, even though it's been on hot steel. And I'm gonna move over to this die set. So my fly press, it has a flat on one end. I'm gonna put that up in there. I'm gonna use this to hold it down. I'm gonna center up my bottom die. Now, for the bottom die, if I take a hot piece of metal on raw steel and I constrict it downward, it will likely get stuck, because as the metal is cooling, it's forming, it's constricting, and it'll get tight on this. So what I use, I got this stuff. It's called Super Moly Bore Cleaner, and it's used in shooting. It's molybdenum disulfide in a paste. I bought this, like a little can like this. I don't know how much it was, $10. It'll last years. I'm gonna coat my dies in this stuff, and it will release, or there's a greater likelihood that when I forge this down, it will release. So molybdenum disulfide, they use it in shooting to increase, you clean the bore of your rifle, you put this stuff down, it supposedly will increase the feet per second you get out of your rifle. But that being said, it has an excellent application in blacksmithing as a die release agent, because the molybdenum disulfide is a very high temperature compound, I guess is what I want to say. It just looks like that. It looks like gray grease. Want with this, and that's why propane is beneficial, is I want a nice even heat. I want the metal to move in a uniform fashion, and hopefully it does. Even with the moly disulfide, the moly, the piece is going to get stuck on there. And so what I don't use my forging hammer, because I'm going to possibly have to whack on it to get it to come out of the die. So I'm using, in this case, a bronze or a copper hammer. Got it at a garage sale. It won't, like if I miss, it won't damage my dies, and it won't damage the piece that much either. It's hard on the swedge block to get a hemisphere, and that's what I want. I'm gonna clean that up a little bit. First I'm gonna do side 2, and then I'm gonna clean that up on the swedge block. But that gets it really close, and that would be a ton of hand forging. If I didn't have the fly press, I would have to hand forge it. And you can see it's starting to get like a hemisphere. I don't want a bowl, I want a hemisphere. So that's a whole bunch of different geometry in order to get that shape. It comes off that easy because of the moly disulfide. Nice hemisphere. I'm going to just true it up. A lot of this I'm going to probably cut off anyway for the next step, but I'm just going to work it over. So this is where, like, you need a specialty tool. If you need a specialty tool, you just make one. The thing I really like about blacksmithing, you should stay hydrated while the metal's heating up. When you're making a die set, this is the bottom die, and if you notice, it's got like clearance around there, 1/8, probably 3/16 of an inch, and that will accommodate the hot steel being in there. It's important. It's just made out of a piece of pipe, and then I put this welded this extra reinforcement because it takes a lot of abuse right on the aperture of the die. So on this one I screwed up. The next step would be forge those wrinkles out on the swedge blocks. I forgot to do that, so I'm gonna have to do one more heat just to true it up with the die set. So if I gapped it out, you can see it's not quite a sphere. That ragged edge, I might trim a little bit more off of the right-hand side, a little less off the left-hand side. And then when I weld it together, I'll have a nice sphere. These Silver Streak marking pencils are kind of cool. They're a little bit more permanent than, say, your soapstone. But when you recall, like, I want to trim a little bit more off of that. And I want to do it nice and evenly. So I'm taking like a 5/16 bar, and I'm just going to use this as like a cutting guide. Remember, it's a guide, so if I feel that it needs to, less than this needs to come off, I'm going to take less than that. If I feel that more that needs to come off, I'm going to take more. Like I might cut on this side of the line. Okay, so now we have our two halves. We've trimmed the excess off. There's a few wrinkles, but that'll be covered up by the weld. And it pretty closely is a hemisphere. The two halves could have been maybe a little wider, but we can also work on that later. So the next step is I'm going to take my flux core welder and weld that seam up as best I can. It doesn't have to look nice. Well, it should look nice, but that's a good application of the flux core welder. It's cheap, you don't need gas, and it'll weld like a fine weld for something like this. It's like a decorative item. The 110 Lincoln Weld Pack 100, which is like the lowest one they make. It'll work perfect for this application. What I'm going to do is tack this all around, and then I'm going to weld this joint out fully. So now we have a welded joint. It's getting hot. I'm gonna set it down. Woo! Just welded with flux core. It doesn't have to be perfect. This isn't a structural weld. It's for like an art piece. So I'm gonna let that cool down, and then I'm gonna like work that weld over and make it kind of disappear. Flux core weld, it's not the greatest. There's probably some porosity in there, but who cares? It holds up nothing. So normally cooling a weld down like that makes it brittle, but in this case it's an art piece. It doesn't matter. I want to do the next step. Okay. So I burned through at one point, but that's okay. I'm going to put the wick or the fuse of the bomb over that hole, so I'm not even going to worry about it. But it's going to be something like that, and I'm going to heat it back up. So like where it's shiny, it'll like get some oxide on it, and it'll all be very uniform. We have basically like a nice hemisphere. But I'm gonna, since I shine that weld joint up, I wanna like get a nice oxide layer on it and maybe work it a little bit more on I'm gonna work it on the swedge block after it's heated up. In order to do that, I've made some special tongs. So these tongs are forged out of like I remember a Subaru axle, but they're nice because now you can manipulate things that are large and round because of the 3 points of contact. Also something that I made because I had the need to have them made. Now what I'm gonna do, I have a Bridgeport milling machine, which I use like a glorified drill press most of the time. But I can use that as a milling machine. What I'm gonna do now is make the little stem where the wick the little fuse will go on the so-called bomb. I'm just gonna eyeball it. If it gets a little off center, that's okay with me for this specific project because it doesn't need to be very extremely accurate. So I just eyeballed it. So we got our hemisphere that's going to be the round part of the bomb. Now we're going to make the little stem that makes it look like a cartoon bomb. So I've gotten like a 2-inch piece of material, and I drilled all the way through it, so I'll have enough at least for 2, if not 3 pieces. I put a chamfer with my angle grinder just to make it look interesting, and so it's not so sharp. And I'm gonna cut that piece off, and we're gonna make the wick part next, or the fuse part. Material. This was out of an old logging cable, and it's about 1/4 inch. This is one of the 6 pieces. Usually the cable's wrapped around a core, and this piece was wrapped around the core. I just put it in the forge to burn off all the oil and grease that lubricates the cable. I'm going to cut it off here and maybe here, and I'm going to show you how I make the wick part for the project. You don't need to film that part. I ran it through the little sprue that I drilled. I just welded a little tack on the back that'll hold it in. Next thing I'm going to do is weld it like that. And then I'm going to put it back in and maybe like make the wick a little bit more, the fuse a little bit more interesting. I have here, I've drawn the F. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out with the angle grinder. I'm going to drill 3 like holes that I'll be able to plug weld the F onto the angle grind or onto the bomb. And I'm going to drill those 3 holes first, and then I'm going to cut the F out with the angle grinder. Not a big deal. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. So now I got my F, and I got it like contoured so it's like a sphere itself. I'm just going to eyeball where I think it looks best. And then those 3 holes are going to be plug welds. Then I'm going to weld onto the F-bomb. F-bomb. So got the F-bomb welded. Looks pretty cool. But I'm gonna now I'm just gonna put it in the forge, let it all heat up to a nice red temperature, and then I'm gonna just let it set. And that'll even out where I wire wheeled it, brushed it, and it'll be an even oxide layer that I'll be able to do something with, that I'll be able to apply a finish on. Numerous things you can do. So yeah, now we've completed our F-bomb. I like that oxide layer. I'm just gonna let it cool down. And then there's a lot we could do with this. I have a magic finish that I put on things. It has to have some kind of an oxide layer on there. And maybe we'll do that in the next video, a short video about how to finish metal. But yeah, that's your F-bomb. That's all the things that go into making it. Now, if I was gonna do this to take full advantage of my tooling and the heat in the forge, I would do 5 or 6 of them at a time. It doesn't make a lot of sense, especially if you use propane, to do 1 at a time. You really, with something like this, you would want to do multiples, at least 3, because it's almost as easy to build 3 or 4 or 5 as it is to build 1. But since this video is about how to do something, the trick is to get the hemisphere. The hemisphere, you could buy a hemisphere and weld, but I like how the weld joint, you kind of see it. I don't try to grind it all out and make it perfect, because it's supposed to be in my opinion, it's supposed to be like a cartoony type thing. It's supposed to be funny, F-bomb, like a play on words. I'd be interested to see what you think. You could certainly leave the F off of it. That would save a step. And you would just have a cartoon, little hand grenade or whatever, little bomb. Like a joke thing that's kind of funny. The F-bomb is kind of interesting. Just, you could give it as a gift. I've made numerous for people at work and just as gifts. The next thing I'd like to do is I'm going to make a series of these, and then I'm going to try to sell them, or I'm not going to try, I'm going to sell them on Etsy. So when I get that going and I have some for sale, I'm going to also do another video about what it's like to sell stuff online, because there's not a lot as far as blacksmithing. That's also interesting. So next time we'll cover what we could do with the finish. There's a lot we could do. We could paint the F red, we could paint it white, we could do just have it all be like a dark finish. But on the next video, what do you want me to do? Should I make the F red? Should I paint it white? You know, I'm thinking black background, white F or red F. Whatever, whoever comments, that's what, you know, I'll take that into consideration, and we'll do that type of finish on our next video. But it's kind of neat. I like it. You know, all made out of scrap, recycled material. We had a lot of fun filming this video, and I hope you learned something. He's all wet and he smells like swamp.